You're now watching We Are Texans Wednesday here on Curtis's Podcast Network, hosted by Curtis Brown. Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Are Texans Wednesday, number 11, here on Curtis's Podcast Network. I am Curtis Brown, of course, the host of the channel and the host of this show. We do a bunch of different shows, all pertaining to the AFC South here on the channel. Tighten Up Tuesday, We Are Texans Wednesday, Duval Thursday, For the Shoe Friday. I've got a fan associated with each of those teams that's a part of those podcasts regularly, and occasionally we get some guests. And then occasionally collaborative efforts happen, and we form this AFC South show. Yes, much like the Wonder Twin powers, we all come together and form one cohesive unit. So don't miss out on those things. We do a lot of preview and reaction stuff during the season. So if you're one of those people who kind of enjoys those kind of things, you found the right spot. Trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. We're at 344 at the time of this recording. And we've been doing a lot better. And let's keep the momentum rolling. I think we're up 15 in the last week. So big numbers. Big numbers. 10 like goal on this episode, and let's get into it. So I wanted to talk today about two of the position needs that the Houston Texans had going into the draft and where they stand now. Those two position groups would include the wide receiver room and the edge rushers. So obviously, in the first round when we went C.J. Stroud and then Will Anderson, we addressed the edge rushing position. He's got good speed and power moves. We'll see how it all works out. He's more of a speed guy, but we'll see how we'll see how he ends up developing into the pros. But I mean, we're hoping that the other guys in that room can step up. In the wide receiver room, it's still kind of anyone's game. We added Nathaniel Tank Dell and Xavier Hutchinson. Dell out of Houston, and Hutchinson, I cannot recall exactly where he's from at the top of my head. But, I mean, it's not very often that a sixth-round receiver ends up being a game changer. We drafted a couple that had great scouting reports. I remember a couple years ago, we drafted Isaiah Coulter, and the scouting reports on him were like, wow, the Texans really snagged a gem here late in the sixth, and I don't think he ever played. And then he's continued to not play any meaningful wide receiver snaps in Chicago. So I'm a little hesitant on that one as far as like that being an actual addition or just being a camp body or practice squad body. Beyond those two guys, you have Nico Collins, who's been often injured and has yet to produce like a 600-yard season in his 2 years in the NFL. He's not played, but I think like max 12 games each year. But I don't even think that's right because I feel like he missed more than 5 last year. Could be wrong there, but you could say that might be quarterback play. It could be any number of things. But when Davis Mills was quarterback last year and for stretches of 2021, I mean, it was Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins who, if he was available, he would be getting a fair amount of targets. There were several games this past season where he led the team in targets, and that says a lot because Brandon Cooks had several games where he led the team in targets, but only had 4 catches and like 37 yards. The wide receiver room leaves a lot to be desired for the Texans. Robert Woods is a steady veteran addition. You hope that he's fully recovered from his injuries a couple years ago, the injury for the ACL. He kind of started looking like he was having a better season as the year went on, but he wasn't available all of the games either. Then you take a look at Noah Brown, who had his most productive season last year, He's been a perennial special teams kind of guy, but had a pretty decent year. He was never their go-to guy, but a decent year for what was probably number 4 or 5 to start the season on the Cowboys roster. So I don't think. And then obviously we have Mechie, who's coming off of an ACL as well. He had a whole year off, as well as he was unfortunate enough to draw the leukemia card, and he's been dealing with that. But he has allegedly been seen a lot more frequently at the Texans facilities lately. He's been working out with the team, and I assume he might be involved with some of the training camp stuff soon. So the off-season organized activities, those could be their team activities. Those could be where we see John Mechie for the first time, and in any meaningful sense in terms of him getting closer to playing. And then really beyond that, Steven Sims is a special teams guy. He's only caught like 12 passes his career. So, but the wide receiver room outside of Woods and Noah Brown is rather young. We have a lot of hope riding on C.J. Stroud to pull some of the best out of these receivers and make some of these draft picks look like they were massive hauls. I would love nothing more than the contract that we gave to Robert Woods to pay off. But if it does, that means that the other guys are not doing very well, or in theory, Robert Woods is eating into that distribution. At this point, I don't trust Nico Collins. It's not that there were a lot of games last year that I watched. I watched all of the Texans game, and I watched most of them in the all-22. But there were a lot of games last year where Mills had some phenomenal throws that Cooks, Collins, whoever else was out there were just not coming down with, that they would have come down with the year before. So I think there was a pretty large regression in the wide receiver room when it comes to that, because there were catches the year before that Brandon Cooks made that he couldn't make the next year. There were several on many drives in several games where I would just be like, he caught that pass. He caught the pass last year. Why are you not catching it now? I don't know. With the wide receiver room, though, I wouldn't put it past them to try to bring somebody in. Who that would be, anybody's guess. If I had to put money on any names, Galladay would be interesting, but beyond that, I don't know. And then when you look at the edge rushing position, there's 8 names in that room. Where'd it go? Oh. 8 names in the room. Obviously leading that pack is Will Anderson. You got John Grenard, Chase Winovich, Derek Rivers, O'Delly, Jerry Hughes, Horton, a rookie we drafted this year in the 4th round, and Demon Harris. So, in reality, O'Delly, Rivers, Harris probably won't make the roster here. It'll be Anderson, Winovich, Grenard, and Jerry Hughes, and Horton. That is an improved edge rushing room in many different ways from what we had last season with Jerry Hughes, John Grenard missing large portions of the year, not really producing when he was there. Chase Winovich had a quiet season, a couple sacks, I believe. Jerry Hughes, though, in his age 33 or 34 season, comes out and gets 8 or 9 sacks for a year, and all of a sudden, he looks a lot better. However, at his now 34 or 35 age season, I imagine that at some point, he's either going to start having diminishing returns, or maybe that was just the last gasp in his career. I don't know. Maybe we're lucky enough to see Grenard blossom, and he takes several steps opposite Will Anderson, and then we have edge rushers set for a little bit. Realistically, though, it's Will Anderson and guys who are on the fringe, either on the way out or fresh-faced, or I would even venture to say that most of them won't make the roster, just generally speaking. Winovich, Grenard, Anderson, Hughes, Horton. Your 5 most likely guys there to make the roster, but I imagine they run with 4 or 5. Probably closer to 4. I don't know that there's anybody in free agency that is worth any time of day. I don't know that you're going to be able to get anybody who can actually push to start over Grenard or Winovich, whichever ends up getting that position. So I think you're kind of hoping, again, in this position, that somebody opposite Will Anderson, and Will Anderson is obviously fresh-faced, he's going to have, he may not have an explosive season this year. He may not. You know, he may come out and actually do what Micah Parsons did. I don't necessarily want to bank on that, because I don't think that that's, you know, fair to him to put Micah Parsons comparisons on him immediately. Let him cook. Let him learn. He's got a phenomenal defensive coach and defensive mind, and Jerry Hughes right there to learn from. So he's in good hands. He has all of the elements around him, and I hope it works out. Like, I really do. But everyone else is literally subject to change within the next year or two if they don't show something. Otherwise, I feel like our next first-round draft pick is still going to be an edge rusher. So, with that, let's talk a little bit about how Nick Caserio's not done making free agent moves. They brought in Greg Little, who's a very flexible lineman, can play any of the positions. He's brought in some other defensive tackle bodies. We've got like 8, 9 on the roster right now. So, I mean, most of those guys won't make it. They'll probably run with 4 and then have some practice squad bodies. But there was 3 positions that I felt like we really needed to improve this year. And because of the deficiencies of the class and maybe where we picked other players, we didn't address all of them enough, in my opinion. I'm hoping Horton can do something, but we'll see. They're all question marks until they get out there when it comes to rookies. You know, you can be a little bit more comfortable with the veterans and saying what they might be able to do. But the older they get, that's where it gets slippery. I think that's all I had today. So, folks, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Go ahead, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Trying to hit 10 like goal on this episode. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're at 344 at the time of this recording, so please help us get there. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Hit me in the comments section with you anything that you may disagree with me about, and be good people.